This is part 4 of episode 5.
We will be continuing with another part of the Apollo missions, 11 through 14. Now, I know 11 isn't the most advertised Apollo mission, but we will tell you about it anyways. Apollo 11 used the Saturn V rocket, and it was the first landing. And it was in 1969. So we did get a man on the moon before the end of the decade. They landed in the Sea of Tranquility, and
which is one of the Maria lakes, I guess. It's called the Sea of Tranquility just because people used to think it was a sea.
yeah, and the landing wasn't the best. Neil overshot the landing site, and so they passed over house-sized boulders, and with only seconds of fuel left.
37 seconds.
I thought it was 13 seconds. I could be wrong. With only seconds of fuel left, they touched down and landed, and then made the first footsteps on the moon. And Neil's famous quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." That's when that was made, if you didn't know. There was also the famous quote, a little less famous than his stepping one, but when they landed, which was the moment that everybody wanted to hear about, they said, "Houston Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." And then Houston replied back with something like, "That's good news. You were turning a bunch of people blue."
A bunch of guys about to turn blue.
Oh, yeah, you got a guys. Yeah, what he said. They did walk on the moon. They had an EVA, extravehicular activity. And the first thing they wanted to do was scoop up a rock. Well, a dirt sample. So that if anything happened on the mission that would make it so they had to leave right away, they at least got a sample. And so they scooped up a rock in the process. And a little bit later, Buzz came out, and then they just did experiments on the moon, and then went home.
Okay, so of course, the crew was Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and then Michael Collins. And the launch date was July 16th, 1969.
Since there were only 2 people that could fit in the lunar module, the LEM for short, Neil and Buzz went, and then Michael Collins stayed up in the capsule orbiting the moon, and he was going to go on Apollo 18. And Apollo 12, which flew on a Saturn V rocket, was another moon landing. They did the most precise moon landing in the ocean of storms. Now, personally, I think that the Apollo 12 missions were the goofiest of all the missions. The guys were such goobs, I guess. They goofed around the whole time. On the way up, one of the guys, I think it was Pete, maybe not, but he put a camera so he could videotape himself going into space. Well, because of the roughness of the takeoff, it fell down and knocked him out. And on all the other missions, the one other mission that landed on the moon, they could only have one person taking a picture of the other, unless it was videotaped. And it was always Buzz taking a picture of Neil. And so they had this precise plan that they were going to bring a timer for the camera that they smuggled on board in a rock carrier. But they couldn't find it. and so they never got this picture of all three of them, or all two of them.
So the crew was Pete Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean, and the launch date was November 14th, 1969.
And they landed near Surveyor 3, the probe that was on the moon. So
That had been launched earlier.
Yeah, that had been launched earlier. That was sort of why they went the Ocean of Storms, so they could meet up with Surveyor 3.
Which, if you think about it, is an amazing bullseye hit to land near a probe 384,000 kilometers away.
Yeah. And they just did some tests, and they were going to have a TV broadcast, but the video camera got damaged, and to try to fix it, one of them hit it with a hammer, which kind of didn't help it, you would say. And so they never got it, even though they had color. So that was kind of upsetting, but...
So Apollo 13, we're going to keep it brief because most people know all about it.
They flew on the Saturn V rocket. They were going to make a moon landing, but they only got close. They had to stir cryo tanks, blew up. NASA made a successful failed mission by saving the men, which, if you haven't seen Apollo 13, it's a very good movie. Tom Hanks did a good job.
The launch date was April 11th, 1970, and the crew was Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes.
And something you may not have known about Apollo 13 was they had a nuclear reactor on board that they were bringing to the moon. But since they didn't go to the moon, they had to dump it in the ocean. So most people don't know that. So we'll move on with our last one for this part, Apollo 14. They were on the Saturn V rocket, and they did a moon landing, of course. They landed in the place that Apollo 13 was going to land. The mission overcame some docking issues, and they did EVAs and the general stuff, testing equipment, and so coming to Apollo 15, they were going to do more scientific moon landings, and so we'll talk about that next episode.
So the launch date for Apollo 14 was January 31st of 1971. The crew was Alan Shepard, Stuart Roosa, and Edgar Mitchell. And was this the one that Alan Shepard hit the golf ball?
Golf ball.
Ian has an interesting story about what he used.
He used the thing that they pick up rock samples with.
And he wasn't supposed to do this.
He definitely wasn't supposed to do this, but he brought a golf ball and a 9-iron head and unscrewed the top of the rock sampler and put a 9-iron head on it and hit a golf ball off the moon. Oh, and also this was the first mission to have color video, since Apollo 13 didn't make it, and Apollo 12 had some issues.
Okay, so this concludes. Is this part 3?
Part 3 or
I think this is part 4
Part 4.
of episode 5.
Thank you.